In two previous videos, we discussed California's transfer on death deeds. And now I want to talk about how to contest a transfer on death deed. So if you find yourself being on the losing end of a transfer on death deed because somebody abused an elder and was able to get themselves named as a beneficiary, you have a right to contest that deed. And there's two broad areas you can use to contest a transfer on death deed. The first area has to do with formalities. So there's some very specific rules as to the way in which transfer on death deeds must be created. And if somebody didn't follow those rules, if they missed one of the requirements for creating the deed in the first place, then you can challenge the deed on that basis. And that tends to be the easiest way to challenge any document, is that it simply didn't meet the legal formalities that are required to create that document in the first place. For example, a transfer on death deed must be recorded within 60 days of being signed. If that didn't happen, you can invalidate the deed just on that basis alone. Transfer on death deeds are also revoked if there's a subsequent deed filed. So if somebody filed a new deed, putting the property into joint tenancy, for example, then the transfer on death deed is no longer going to be valid. The second broad category where you can challenge a transfer on death deed has to do with the intent of the property owner. So you can challenge their intent to have created that deed if the owner lacked capacity, was unduly influenced at the time they created the deed, or was the victim of fraud. These are the same bases that we use to challenge any will or trust document. In order to create a transfer on death deed, same as a will or a trust, the property owner must have the intent to have named a beneficiary. But if they lacked the capacity to formulate that intent, then the deed would be invalid. If you're going to challenge a transfer on death deed, you must do it quickly. You have 3 years after the property owner dies to file a lawsuit challenging a transfer on death deed. If you don't do it within that time frame, then you are forever barred from filing your lawsuit at any time in the future. Also, if you file your lawsuit and file a lien on the property within 120 days after somebody dies, then the court has the power to return that property back to its rightful owner. If it goes beyond 120 days, then the court can only return that property back if it hasn't been sold to a third party in an arm's length, good faith transaction. So your rights to get that property back are diminished if you wait 120 days after the property owner dies.